Time to check in with infectious disease specialist Dr. Zain Chagla with the latest developments of COVID-19. Good morning. Thanks again for joining us.
No worries.
So here we are tomorrow, heading back into a lockdown. Let's talk about where we're falling down in terms of restrictions and vaccine rollout. Starting with restrictions, where are we missing here?
Yeah, I think the problem, we're in a critical situation. Hospitals are filling up, ICUs are filling up, and this is a Hamilton problem as much as it's the Toronto problem. Many of the hotspot regions, Toronto, Hamilton, Peel region, had taken a path of restricting outdoor dining and lowering outdoor gathering limits as what happened. Now, there are other regions where transmission has been occurring, where they've closed restaurants, minimized capacity, where I think that's probably going to help. If you're going to use this to buy time for things to cool off a little bit, you probably want to make it, the sacrifice and at least the hardness of it to a point where, you do minimize contacts and break chains of transmission, and you probably let people go outdoors to risk mitigate themselves as much as possible. So,
right, because the outdoor restrictions, it's not evidence-based, is it?
No, and again, like a group of 10 outside, well, I would rather have 10,000 of those interactions as compared to one of those interactions that comes inside and leads to 10 new cases, right? And I think we kind of miss that. Like there is, BC is letting people gather outside because they realize people are tired, the weather's good. We would rather have them doing that than necessarily bringing it indoors.
Now, having said that, we are in a critical situation with ICU beds. Now, the Ontario Science Advisory Board, they're saying we really should be having a stay-at-home order right now. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, we're seeing transmission. The problem with retail establishments isn't necessarily me going into the retail establishment. It's the working in the retail establishment. Essentially, that is where a big amount of transmission is occurring. The more workplaces that are open, unfortunately, mean that there is more transmission. And you're showing this diagram here. This is our work that shows VOCs, that shows deaths, that shows cases in Toronto and Peel region, in communities that are essential workers, far outweigh that of communities that aren't essential workers. And again, in the first wave, the second wave, the third wave, we're seeing this. If we're not addressing that community, and again, a stay-at-home order doesn't address that community, they're going to get infected while the rest of us stay home and protect ourselves.
Yeah, so we see the blue line there. Now, let's shift here to vaccine rollout. And again, we have targeting issues there as well, related to essential workers and other groups.
Yeah, the science table showed that the highest region postal codes, the highest incidence postal codes for COVID-19, an 80-year-old in those regions was 60% vaccinated as compared to the regions that had very little COVID, where 80% of the 80-year-olds were vaccinated. And, again, an 80-year-old in a high-risk region is probably going to get COVID as compared to an 80-year-old in a low-risk region. And it went through all demographics, right? And so these hard-hit regions, that overlap with essential work, that overlap with low income, that overlap with racialized communities, they're not being targeted by a vaccine rollout adequately. And if we're going to use a vaccine to get us out of this situation, we need to be putting it into people that are going to get COVID-19 tomorrow. Well, the best guess of where that's going to happen is the people that are getting COVID-19 today.
Yeah, and those essential workers, that's where the variants, and of course the transmissibility is far faster than the previous or the original coronavirus. So again, do we really have to reshift that vaccination rollout? And forget about
absolutely.
Age, but yeah.
Yeah, again, forget about age. At a certain point, yes, we can keep the mass vax clinics going by a certain age and maybe slow that down by a week or two. But if you're, again, wanting to get out of this situation, you want us to use this stay-at-home time to actually get community transmission under control with vaccination. Yeah. That's where to be pivoting it right now.
We have like 30 seconds left, but we have a story this morning, too, that Pfizer, in their latest clinical trials, are saying, hey, our second shot looks like it lasts for 6 months, which is more than they had expected. But it kind of reminded me that, wow, it's not going to be long before we're in a maintenance phase of booster shots.
Yeah, at least that buys a 6 months buffer. And the other part of that press release was they did a clinical trial in South Africa where it was 100% effective against the South African variant. And that's really, really
Yes.
good news that
Yeah.
even with these variants circulating, we have
Okay.
hope that this vaccine will work through.
Yeah, well, we'll have to end on that good news, but we appreciate your time as we always do every Friday. Dr. Zain Chagla, thanks so much.
No problem.